Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke and we are good to go. We have an Andrew Mwenda who we have missed for a while. He was in the studio exactly 40 minutes ago. You are most welcome, Ali Bad, old man about town, Andrew Mwenda.
I have to come, I'm an old man of 111 years. I have to come early. They lift me up the staircase. I sit and rest, regain my breath. Then I'm able to speak. You guys, you enter. Katundu has just entered less than a minute ago. All the teachings I gave you, you have not done anything. The one who came earliest is Sembuju. He entered 1 minute past 10.
Because I was coming to speak at a talk show.
So
not to see the colors of the studio.
But you should enter the studio. They first serve you tea, you rest, then you speak. Yes. Then my grandson Fred Muhumus, all these Banyora have tried to teach manners. The guy has entered 5 minutes late. The host himself entered 4 minutes late. So if we say Uganda is backward, it's because we don't keep time.
We are on time, Andrew. This show starts after the news and after the gang bed.
Yes, but you, as the host, should be here 10 minutes before 10.
I was outside.
Sembuju should be here 5 minutes. Everybody else in the studio 5 minutes.
Everyone knows the challenges of hosting Andrew Mwenda, and he has already started.
He had a show called Andrew Mwenda Live.
Yeah,
he used to host people, 1 hour show. He takes 45 minutes.
Okay, what was the name of the show? Repeat it.
Andrew Mwenda Live.
Exactly. you have answered yourself. The show was Andrew Mwenda dead or Andrew Mwenda quiet?
You have to rest him. That's how I ended up being arrested. The radio station switched off. Very difficult fellow.
Mwenda.
Yes. So he caused our station to be closed.
And the ratings shoot through the roof.
Of a cross
station.
Yes.
How?
When it reopened after 1 week, advertisers were paying top dollar to put the adverts on the show.
On today's topics, Dr. Fred Mumuza, you were busy Thursday morning at a Chigo Thinkers session.
It was a good session.
And educated the nation on especially bank, what's the word they use? Resolution.
Close and resolution.
Close and resolution. And I remember that Andrew Mwenda was also a little while ago in the bulk of fighting closures. So, but very briefly, people learned that if a bank closes, there are reasons for closure, and the communication director said recent bank closures were done because of governance and undercapitalization. And then you explained that people were able to get 10%, 10 million back as a refund. What we didn't discuss then, what people would have wanted to know is like, what percentage of people are those that have 10 million and less? And what percentage of those that have 11 million and more in a particular Ugandan bank?
I think there was a publication at one point which indicated that almost 90% of Ugandans in the banking sector have literally less than 1 million or 10 million or 1 million. I forget the facts. But you'll find that in many of these banks, really, when you say 10 million is the insurance deposit, and sometimes that's why they will base, because they are looking at who is going to be affected. Can we protect the masses? By the time you pay 10 million, chances are 95% of the customers of that bank are covered. That is how bad
for Mercantile Bank it was.
Of course, Mercantile Bank, where it was
94%.
Yes, so you can see. So you're remaining with the 6%, but even that 6% do matter, because as we saw earlier, these are the livestock fellows. They must have their cash to buy the house.
Give some water to Andrew. You don't want him to die here.
It could be the SC. But those are the issues. So sometimes the central bank would base on that.
And how much money would that be? Because if capitalization is, what was it, 150 billion?
Yeah, this particular
so the 94,
bank, this particular bank, and they were given options. If you can't raise the 150, downgrade to tier 2, where it was 120, or you can even downgrade to tier 3. So they still could have survived, but of course there are certain services you may not do. But that's the judgment of the management, and I think that's why the central bank said even the governance and management had issues, because they should have seen this coming. They were forewarned earlier, and each bank submitted a schedule on how they intend to hit the 150 billion. There were those already, it was just a matter of legal issues. You have to go to a General Assembly, an AGM, and then declare new shares, There are some banks which, if I bring in money, me, I'm a big bank, and my other shareholders, especially the listed ones, do not bring in any new money because they cannot, we are going to dilute them. So you don't want to be now a dominant shareholder in the bank because the others couldn't. They have been your shareholders. So some banks, I don't want to mention, I'm in the sector myself, I don't want to be speaking on the advantage of those that I know, simply said we'll give you bonus shares. We can't wait for you to gather the billions the central bank needs. But our parent bank has given us all the money. But in order not to dilute you, because you have not made and put any new money on the table, we'll give you bonus shares. So all those programs were shared with the central bank because the central bank had to approve and say, I've agreed your roadmap on the journey to the 150 or the 120, as it was indicated. Then some said we shall merge. Others said, me, I'm downgrading. I can't find the 150, but sure, I can find the 120. So there were so many things. And
but the other question was, so how much money of the 150, 120, what percentage would the 94% have?
Of course, the 94, that is depositors.
Would they have like, would they have 100 billion? No, would they take 100 billion? And
there are two things
6%,
here. The 150 is shareholders' funds. It's not even depositors' funds. Before you start to operate, you, the shareholders, put on the table 150 before you even allowed to get any deposit from anybody. So the depositors' funds are not even part of the 150. And as it was indicated, 150 is the minimum. A big bank like Stanbic, the central bank will say, now, for everybody in this category is 150. You, because you are big in the market, yours is 250. Because you must have sufficient capital to run your operation since you are big. It's just like me and you are not going to have the blood of a 10-year-old or a 2-year-old. We need more blood to do the things that we do. So the 150 was for shareholders. Now, if shareholders can't find it, then you have a problem. And partly the reason you increase that is if there are any delays in recovering loans you paid. The rule says the shareholders should cover that shortfall. So every time a bank writes off a loan, you have written off 25 billion. Shareholders must bring the 25 billion and replace it. So that's why you need big capital, because that's what you write down. Now, if the capital is 25 billion and you're writing off 15 billion, then the capital is eroded. Now, if shareholders can't bring in that money, then you have a problem. And I think that's what... he used to pay his loan every 5th of the month. Now he's taking another 3 weeks before he pays. Are you sure he's still what he was? Have you checked on him? Have you raised that information? So they can tell you, because of that deterioration in the repayment schedule, subjectively downgrade this particular loan. They have those conversations on a regular basis. So while me and you would wake up and hear this bank was closed, that process between the bankers and the central bank has been on continuously.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, because if I bank money on Monday or Tuesday, and then
the
you
bank
close it
on Wednesday. You might even be sitting in the bank when the announcement comes. But those are the details of even when we go for medical practice. Of course, they spare you. They spare.
Comes in the night.
No, but that's the problem. Ichikubo man might have just deposited his 20 million for safety, planning to go and transact tomorrow, and then for the next 3 months he has no money.
Yeah.
How does he run his business?
And you get back 10 million to begin with.
That also can come later. Those are really the challenges in the banking sector, but unfortunately, that's how the banking sector runs the world over.
Yeah, but the central bank director of communications was talking about trust. If once you start losing trust in the banking system,
and that's what they are trying to preserve.
Problems.
That's what you're trying to preserve. And that at least 94% of mercantile banks people have recovered their money. To them, they will trust that system.
94 men were they?
This is the thing.
That's the trust.
And someone said, for example, some of those people in that particular bank they are so much in the meat packing.
They're in the meat
business.
Yeah.
So if you run out of, if your capital is locked up,
and remember, cattle people, you pay before you pick the cow.
Yeah.
Pay my money. Now your money was in that bank. Your cattle business is really stalled. It affects both the traders and the livestock fellows, the owners of the cows.
Andrew Mwenda, previously you were very much a lawyer of Crane Bank when it was closed down.
When there's not a lawyer.
He was practically the lawyer of Crane Bank, running adverts, putting up a fight. And
lawyer, defender, spokesperson.
Everything.
Yes, of Crane Bank. I plead guilty as accused.
So when you think about Crane Bank, and I don't know that you are a defender of a bank or the depositors, But all depositors of Crane Bank got their money back.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. You see,
All
Crane
of it.
Bank, they do not apply the other rule of
Yeah.
the 10 million.
Yes.
They transferred all the assets
into another bank.
into another bank, and the bank assumed all the liabilities. The liabilities are those deposits. So DFCU assumed all the liabilities. The assets of Crane Bank were more than the liabilities by 200 billion. That's why DFCU paid 200 billion. You know, let me explain. When they are taking over a bank, there is something they call the purchase of assets and assumption of the liabilities agreement, which they enter. So the buying bank is supposed, the central bank is supposed under the law, and Kaltuntu is better than me, he will explain this. They are supposed to value all the assets of a bank.
Did you read the Constituency report?
I read the Constituency report, I read the law, I read it, because I was so deeply involved in this.
In here they say, in this one, you did not assess the value. In this one,
but let me explain to you. So, under the law, the central bank had appointed a statutory manager of the bank. The statutory manager was supposed to assess the situation in which the bank is and give central bank a report. On the basis of that report, the bank would do an evaluation as required by the law to establish what are the assets and what are the liabilities. And depending on the class of assets, which are the assets to discount and by what method to discount, all these are stated in the law.
Yeah.
You get it? Then you arrive at a value. It is on the basis of that value that you go to sell. In the case of Crane Bank, and many times what the central bank was doing, if there were non-performing assets, those are loans that are where people are defaulting. Oscar, I need your attention, 100%.
You have my attention.
You are speaking to all of us.
I see you are whispering to a pretty young lady there.
The majority of the people you're talking to are not with Oscar here. And actually now you have disrupted the flow of their listening.
So I was explaining. So the central bank didn't value the assets of Crane Bank. That was the one big mistake they did. The second, they did not even listen to the statutory manager they appointed, because Munyagwa, isn't that the guy's name, said
Timba
Mugwanya said he was on his farm, he read on social media that the bank had been sold. You put somebody there who was supposed to give you, to manage the bank, either to back to health or to say this bank is a bad state, you need to sell it. He played no role, and when they were negotiating to sell the bank, they did not even consult him. He said it before Kosase. I was watching him on TV and I have a video on my phone. So the question becomes, on what ground was Crane Bank's assets and liabilities transferred to DFCU? It turns out that the DFCU gave an offer. They said, okay, here we have a bank we are selling. How much can you give us? Said 200 billion. Now, what was that 200 billion for? If you look at the purchase of assets and assumption of liabilities agreement, it says, it does not mention the value of the assets they were selling. It says this guy will give them 200 billion and he will not even pay it in cash. Instead, he would buy treasury bonds of 200 billion at an interest rate of 20%, which the bank would pay him, and then he would pay the other 200 billion he was supposed to buy it for, absurd, over a period of 36 months. Basically, the Auditor General even did a report and said in the first year the central bank lost interest on its own money over about 30 billion. It was the biggest fraud ever in the history of banking in Uganda. The third thing is that Crane Bank had what they call a bad book. That is the total value of loans that were not performing, that were in default. It was worth 560 billion. There is no line in the purchase of assets and assumption of liabilities about where that bad book would go. Essentially, it was given to DFCU under the table. 7.
It's a bad book.
Well, but no, historically,
You can go and collect it.
exactly. Historically, what the central bank used to do, they would sell you.
Exactly.
Guys, let me explain. Oh,
Yes.
Can I be protected?
Yes.
We are just giving information,
No,
reinforcing your point.
the bad loans that are not performing are backed by securities. Very good pieces of security, like real estate. Normally, what the central bank has historically done, and with the exception of Crane Bank, is they would retain the bad assets, the bad book, and same thing, bad book, bad assets, bad loans, defaulting loans.
And how bad
Yes.
they can be worse.
Yes,
You know,
and
bad,
then
worse and worse.
the central bank would enter an agreement with the purchasing bank and say, you collect on our behalf on a commission basis, we will pay you 10, 20 or 30%. In the case of Crane Bank, we do not know what happened to that bad book. All we know, it was taken to DFCU and the Bank of Uganda cleaned its hands. So those are you asked me about Crane Bank, but I wanted to come to the issue of banking. And this is where I would disagree with my very intelligent grandson, Fred. Because
I'm a Gen Z. If you're 110 years,
111.
Yeah, I'm certainly Gen Z now.
Yes. So here are the questions we Ugandans should ask ourselves. When we talk of the ideas regarding policies to do with banking, they are presented to us as that they have universal application. Who articulated these ideas and principles of banking? To serve what interest? You remember that any policy, any idea has an interest it serves. It has someone whose interest it serves. Really, the banking system of Uganda, the Central Bank of Uganda, is this a central bank for Uganda? I will tell you, Ugandans, that's a central bank for IMF. IMF is a representative of multinational capital. The central bank is there to eliminate Africans participating in the banking sector and have multinational banks take over your economy. So all the ideas about banking that we espouse are not about us, about somebody else. Two, how can you in a poor country like this say a bank, to own a bank you should require 150 billion. In France it's 40 million euro, an economy of 7 trillion or 5 trillion. Yes. 40 million euro. In Uganda you are the same as France. Mm-hmm. How many Ugandans can raise that money? In 1900, you studied the United States. In 1900, there were 30,000 banks. In the United States, it had 60 million people. Not very different from Uganda. About 30,000 banks or 15,000. How can Uganda have only 27 banks? 95% of which are foreign owned. And these ideas are not even just in banking. You look at your manufacturing sector, look at your telecommunication sector, look at your insurance sector, look at all the commanding heads of your economy. Essentially, we have systematically handed our economy to foreigners. And let me tell you, Oscar, the cost of foreign capital dominating your country, the economic hemorrhage it imposes on you, is certainly worse than any corruption of Anita Mongo you can complain about. These telecoms, all these companies, they indulge in transfer pricing, they indulge in profit repatriation 100%, they don't transfer technology to you, they don't innovate, they don't expand, they do transactions rather than transformation investments, transaction investments rather than transformation investments. If these countries on a roundabout can never break out of the sake of poverty precisely because it is owned by somebody else. Yeah. You take a country, you tell me one country you know in the history of economic development, whether it's Germany, the USA, Singapore, Japan, Korea, which developed on the back of foreign direct investment when it was the biggest share of GDP. Whether you talk of Korea with Samsung, Hyundai, Daewoo, Kia, LG, they are Korean companies. Whether it's Germany with BMW, Japan with Toyota and Nissan. I mean, what are your industrial giants? So in political economy, we say you need to cultivate what we call domestic or national bourgeoisie class, national capital, to be the vehicle for your transformation. So the ideas, hold a second, Oscar, the ideas we have about how to manage an economy in Uganda, those that are exposed in the central bank, in the Ministry of Finance of Uganda, in our universities elsewhere, the ideas imported from Western countries, they articulate a vision of multinational capital, and they convince us that we should hand our economy to foreigners and for us to become servants to foreigners.
Andrew, I want us to come back a little bit. With the depositors...
That's how Korean Bank was taken.
With the depositors of Korean Bank, who made the decision...
You have reported the Mwenda's quarrel over the closure of Korean Bank into our show.
And as promised, he was a spokesperson, he was everything. Now he's continuing where he put a full stop.
Who made the decision that all Korean Bank depositors get their money back? And they are not making the decision for these ones.
No, because of the nature in which the two banks were resolved.
The Korean Bank was not closed.
It wasn't closed. It was moved into another bank. So
its assets were more than the liabilities, so it could repay all its liabilities.
And partly because of that, there was a bank willing to receive it. You may imagine that
was asked.
Yes, you may imagine that in the case of this, that option was also available. But because of the nature of its assets and liabilities, there was certainly no bank ready to pick it up, because that's usually the option. Close of the nature of mercantile is the last option.
No, it's not true. Actually, let me say this. I personally went with a bank from Portugal one day. Also, I went with a bank from Sri Lanka. The third time was a Jewish bank from New York who wanted to buy Korean bank, and the central bank frustrated them. We went to the president's State House 3 times.
And we are comparing Ukraine with Mercantile. We are saying in the case of Mercantile and Ukraine could be bought.
Yes.
But
Mercantile, no.
No, but Dr.
Korean bank had so many buyers.
Oscar,
but who are they?
I think at the tail end of his submission,
Yeah.
Mwenda,
You're on microphone now.
Mwenda has answered the question you have been asking.
Yes.
He has told you they went to State House to see the president. So these decisions are political decisions.
Yeah.
Of course.
There will be some other causes.
So the two banks of this year are EFC.
You think the resolution of bank issues go into where? Look, 2008 when there was a crisis in America, were they not going to the White House and Congress to rescue American banks? Uganda doesn't rescue its banks. The American banks had a debt to liability ratio of 1:33. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citigroup. The Americans put their 700 billion to rescue them. In Uganda, you bury your banks, Americans rescue theirs. And they tell you, no, don't intervene in the bank, let it collapse. They rescue theirs, you bury yours. Let me tell you, Africans, we have a problem. I'm sorry to interrupt on this one.
No, you have your problem.
Africans, we have a problem. For us, we are told our banks, sink them. Theirs, in one night, Congress sat, the president met with the secretary of the treasury, the central bank governor, the chairman of the Fed, and senators and congressmen. All American banks were rescued. Ugandan banks were buried.
And we shall lose out on the aspect that I want you to address, which Semojo had started on, the depositors.
The decisions, even to open a bank, to close it, are all political decisions. Like all the major decisions in Uganda, whether it is construction, whether which company.
Sometimes not. If you're going to open a school, you need permission. You need to get the license.
A school is a small thing.
Same as closing a school. You need permission to close it.
We're talking about Oscar. Serious things. Don't bring schools because that's where you are.
Schools, very serious.
Mwenda here.
That's where you take the children.
Especially the schools you have in mind. Very serious.
Andrew here, some time back, was complaining about penalty to construct a road, and these are contracts of over 50, 100 million US dollar. All those decisions are taken by M7, and I don't want to take the Andrew's line of blaming foreigners and World Bank etc.
But
Kenya has banks. They are actually here. Yeah, they're actually here. KCB is here. Equity Bank is here. I don't think Kenya cannot be influenced by the IMF and World Bank because you go to the same market to look for capital. I think because of the politics of Uganda, in Kenya they're a little bit liberal, so they can allow local banks. But Museveni is safer when Ugandans don't have money. That's why he even celebrates a collapse of local banks.
Celebrates?
Yes, he does. But as Andrew said, the closure of Chigundu's bank, Greenland Bank, they had got a bank from Nigeria to buy it. But Museveni stopped it. And that's why the trips by Chigundu and Sare and Muhozi to rescue Greenland Bank were not trips to the Governor Bank of Uganda. They were trips to Rwachitura to meet the one who makes
Andrew has told you they had 3 trips to see the president.
Yes.
On the issue of Crane Bank.
I don't know, but Chigundu went with Muhozi, and in the discussion with Museveni, he said, I will never contest for president as long as you are still interested. You think that these things...
I wrote the story myself.
Yes. So, yes, the economics...
I wrote a story in Monitor of Chigundu.
The economics play a part.
So to reopen a bank, they were saying, I will never run for presidency. Instead of talking about a bank.
His pleading had nothing to do with the capitalization of the bank, had nothing to do with the corporate governance, but the pleading, sir, I will never contest as long as you are interested. I will never contest for president. And they had gone in the company of Saleh and Muhozi. So the issue of the closure of banks, Mercantile is a small bank. If you look at the banks in Uganda, and I think many people may not even realize that it existed. Those who are not looking at the list of commercial banks in Uganda. So its effect on the economy, but also on the confidence of banking is minimal because it was a very small bank somewhere. If it was one of the major banks, certainly it will affect the sector. The commercial banks in Uganda, when I was presenting a response to the budget as a shadow minister for finance, my complaint and the complaint of many colleagues in parliament was that out of these 26 banks in Uganda, as Andrew said, especially the main ones are all either by South Africans, by British. Even what government was presenting as a domestic borrowing, in our view, was actually not domestic borrowing. This financial year, government will pay interest on money it keeps pinking in these commercial banks of up to 12 trillion. We have a public debt, the public debt at 97, 50%, about 50 trillion is money that we have borrowed from multinational, from countries. But even what government presents as a domestic borrowing, the rest, which is about 40 trillion shilling, is from these banks. The point Andrew made earlier. If I am a bank from wherever, and every year government is going to give between ourselves 12 trillion in interest, why should I be interested in capitalizing businesses in Uganda? Why should I be interested in extending credit to all sorts of either manufacturing, etc., when there is here easy money to lend and to correct? So deliberately, I don't know whether it was deliberate. I cannot accuse the president and his finance people of deliberately corrupting the local commercial banks. They may have walked into a trap unknowingly.
Some
and it's very difficult now.
This is a first from Semojo.
Yeah, they may have walked there unknowingly, and now it's very difficult to get out. Because these banks, Stanbic, Standard Chartered, etc., they are the ones who are sustaining the country. Every end of a month, every start and end of a quarter, you have no money even to meet the basic things like salaries, etc. That's why you keep rolling there. You go back, borrow and pay. The interest keeps rising from 8 trillion to now 12. I think next financial year it will be 15. So the economy, in our view, when we are arguing, making a response to the budget, was that we are unaiding economy. And we don't see solutions. Even the Muhumuzas who are professors, I don't see them advising government out of this crisis. Our view then was that you need to deal with expenditure itself and then begin reducing on the debt. But also the whole idea of closure, first of Uganda Commercial Bank, Cooperative Bank, and the rest of the indigenous banks. While Museveni may have celebrated at that time that I have finished people who in the future may collect enough money to compete against me. That's why I said he may have walked there unknowingly. There was no reason for killing of the commercial bank. And even the one of Mwenda, this bank of Mwenda.
Crane.
Yes. If you read the Abdul's report and you follow the hearing of the committee, I don't think the decision to close Crane Bank was a financial decision. Maybe Sudiri and Mwenda may have done things that upset Museveni, and he said one way of some other things. Let me close their bank and then deal with them. I don't know.
It was a financial reason.
That's what was advanced. That's what was advanced. But the trips that Andrew has told you made, and
it was because they had a buyer.
Even some of the assets are rotting. I have seen some of the branches; they are not even sold. I don't know what has happened to them because DFC didn't want to take over everything. So a bank, a bank that has all those assets, you said it in the manner that they did. But even some of the assets are not taken over.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Semojo.
The decision, as I said at the beginning, to open up a bank in Uganda and to close it are all decisions that are going to be made by Museveni, mainly because of political purposes. And wants to compare that with the US. In the US, the politicians are going to get involved because they want to save their economy. Mr. Museveni is preoccupied with saving his presidency, so he's not going to be driven by economic interest. As long as you disturb him, he will close you. It doesn't matter how that will affect the public. In the US, they are saving economy, they are not saving politics, because after 4 years, you'll have to walk away.
How come he hasn't just gone to parliament on the politics?
The Honorable Abdul Katonto.
For you, he kidnapped you and you called me here crying in the morning.
So it means you're working for him.
Maybe I'm not as a big threat as you were.
He was actually coming here when
he called
they
me here.
him.
He said they have kidnapped me. He put his hands up alerting everybody on
That's
the
very
street.
true.
So, Honorable Katuntu, there's a tweet here on X from Moses BX, and he brings us back to back on the ground, out of Mwenda and Semoju's, very, very high level discussion. And he says, this is important, Oscar. I have a savings account with Equity Bank, which I'm currently using sparingly. Should I be confident that my savings are safe with that bank? The people want to, that particular thing, should they go and remove, put underneath the pillow, and leave just the 10 million there?
No, I think decisions are not made that way. I really don't know whether you're talking about confidence in the banking system.
By depositors, yeah.
Yes. Since the COSASE report, I think, and this is like a 2019, we have just had only, I think, one closure of a bank.
Two.
But very, very small. After that report, and that became one of the reasons we were having a lot of conversation with other people, when they say, if you go through that process about prosecuting people and so on. And me, who was sharing that process, was how do I improve this process so that these banks are now run better, and if Bank of Uganda has seized them, then they are managed properly and not fraudulently, like Andrew was talking about in terms of Green Bank. There's been a lot of improvement. In Bank of Uganda, you've got what they call the Bank Supervision Department, headed by an executive director. And that's where the problem was, that in many of these banks were having problems, but those problems were not managed. And once the banks collapsed or were seized, then they became some sort of carcass for all the scavengers to grab, and to put it in simple words. Should we have confidence in the banking system as it is now? I think we should. There's been a lot of improvement. Unfortunately, by the time Bank of Uganda takes that decision, it has tried to engage the bank, the particular commercial bank. However, it cannot go public that this bank is having a problem because you don't have a run-on. And that's where the problem is. So it sort of handles it behind closed doors until it reaches a point where there is nothing to do but to close it. But we can now go to what Andrew and Doctor were talking about. The owners' funds of 150 billion. You see, banking industry in Uganda is so much regulated, like in maybe many other countries. Even to hold shares in a bank, you must be approved by Bank of Uganda. Yes. A shareholder. So it's not like a school that anybody can come up and is a shareholder or airport. No, shareholding, you must be approved by Bank of Uganda. Whether you are rich, they might say, no, you are rich, but you are not such a person who can own a bank. 2, the top management, from managing directors and other officers, principal officers, they must be approved by Bank of Uganda. So it is not pure about shareholders appointing Andrew Mwenda Katuntu as their managing director. No. Why do they do this? To make sure that this institution is run according to prudential standards.
Who set the standards?
Bank of Uganda.
To benefit who?
And the Financial Institutions Act, which I actively got so much involved in its enactment. Why? Because I had been one of the lawyers for Dr. Sulaiman Chigun. So I knew how how Greenland Bank collapsed. So you have those standards set. And I must say this, Oscar, many of these banks that were closed or resolved, to use the technical word, had problems in their management. There is no doubt. Yeah. There is no doubt about that.
Is there an organization that doesn't have any problems in the management?
You can answer that question.
We're talking about banks here, not just any organization.
So when they had those problems, Bank of Uganda is supposed to come in and assist them resolve those problems. And that was the major failure on part of Bank of Uganda at that time. For all those banks that were resolved. Many of them, if you talk about capital, they had inadequate capital. They had become insolvent. Many of them. We are talking about TEFE, you are talking about cooperatives, you are talking. There are like 9 of them which I investigated. However, once Bank of Uganda seized them, it did not seize them for purposes of helping them to sort out their problems. It seized them and decided to eat them, all of them. And that's to go, and I'm trying to use these words so that somebody who is listening follows it. Because if you go so much down Rumenda way, Dr. Momuza, people may not get what we are saying. So, 1, Crane Bank inclusive, Greenland Bank inclusive, cooperative inclusive, the resolution was fraudulent. It was fraudulent. And all those facts are there in that report, in black and white. So, Oscar, do we need to have
orchestrated the fraud, the central bank, which was supposed to be the one to manage the fraud?
Yes, that one I agree. But let me tell you, I was sat in these meetings. I don't know whether I say it, but I think I should for purposes of the public. Sometimes President Museveni is blamed for many things he didn't commit a crime. I sat in the meetings, 4 meetings with the president.
To him.
When you are head of an institution, that's why
Can we first listen to
Secret
you? Have
Service
not allowed the man to
was
speak.
the one who resigned.
Oscar, can you
When she
protect
was not at the scene when Trump was shot.
Okay, I sat in 4 meetings, and the president was there chairing. Bank of Uganda was there. We were there.
Minister of Finance.
IGG was there. Minister of Finance.
And Andrew was there.
No. Andrew wasn't there.
Crane Bank was not invited.
So, and I could see the president pleading. Say, can't we find a solution for that? Really pleading. And the good gentleman from Kampala Road, they're saying, no, sir, we can't do that. For us, we are independent. We have taken the decision. We can't do this. I saw
Same
it
for Grand Bank.
I saw it with my own eyes in meetings. He even went ahead and lamented. He said, you people, you know the embarrassment you caused me. You closed the Obasanjo's bank.
No, go on. Yokubu, go on.
Go on is bank.
Global Trust Bank.
Yes. The man flew in here.
Former president of Nigeria, Yokubu
yes,
Gowon.
Gowon, he was a former president of Nigeria.
General.
And he went and said, you people, you're embarrassing me. What can we do to save this bank? And they said, no, we can't. We can't. So
I can argument you, Abdu, because when I attended all the meetings.
So to me, sometimes...
But when you're interrupting him...
Andrew Mwenda live.
So Andrew Mwenda dead.
One, the Bank of Uganda at that time, they would take independent decisions. But some of them were really wrong decisions they were taking. And why were they taking this wrong decision? Because some principal officers had the personal interest in some of these banks, fraudulent interest, without going into names and so on. They were there, and we know them. And the president at that time, he tried his best. I remember in those meetings to say, how do we save these banks? He even urged that very point about which Semjo and Andrew are talking about local banks. Say, these are local banks. What can we do? Say, no, sir. One officer said, sir, if somebody is dead, we bury. And he said, these ones are dead. I said, but you know, from the point they are raising, they could be sick. We can treat them. They said, sir, no, this should be buried.
Yeah. Katuntu, you have spoken very well. Let me also argument your point. I, Oscar, resolution of Bank, I attended meetings between the president, the attorney general, the minister of finance, the governor of the central bank, deputy governor, the director bank supervision, with Sudhir and his lawyers, and then me. And the president mentioned that he had called me there as his strategic advisor on this issue. And I did not hide.
So you were advising both Sudhir and Museveni?
That's what strategic advisors do.
Exactly. So I felt that
Not surprised that
the
central
president
bank took
tried
its
to
position.
explain to
I
the
can
bank.
understand why
The
the bank was
president
growing.
gave his opinions because the central bank is supposed to be independent. The president gave his opinions on the matter of the resolution of Foreign Bank, which the central bank rejected. We had about 5 meetings at State House. Even after those meetings, we found banks which were interested in buying Ukraine Bank. I took them to the president because the central bank was refusing to meet them, and the central bank refused. Yeah. And finally sold the bank to DFCU underhand during the Christmas. No one knew. It was a very, very... Abdul Katuntu is correct to say that many times, yes, the bank may have problems, like any bank or any organization can have problems. The central bank people had ulterior motives because then they would feast on these non-performing assets. Sell them to themselves and their friends. So they would exploit a weakness a sickness in the central bank, in the commercial bank, get it taken over, then resolve this issue by selling it off, and then they steal the things. It isn't that the central bank itself was a neutral party.
Oscar,
Yes.
there is nobody in Uganda who will believe what Abdu and Mwenda are saying.
Yes.
Let me start.
The truth sometimes is very hard to believe.
Bank of Uganda board, chaired by Mutevere Sad, and they said they will not give Basajja Balaba money to rescue his hides and skins business when he had loans in Stambik and Sanchar. With minutes written, we will not. And I had those minutes when I was still working at the Observer. Museveni said, you must give him the money, and this week. Even against a resolution of Bank of Uganda board, they gave Basajja Balaba money.
It has happened.
There you are wrong. You are factually incorrect.
It has happened in Parliament recently when you are trying to refuse to give
So you
him money.
see, the central bank,
Andrew,
please, at least it's a matter of fact. The central bank never gave Basajja Balaba money. What happened is Basajja Balaba went to the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance wrote to the central bank saying, we owe Basajja Balaba this amount of money. The Secretary of the Treasury. On the basis of the letter by the Secretary of the Treasury, Basajja Balaba got a letter of comfort. The central bank governor wrote to the banks and saying, okay, I can give you a letter of comfort because the Treasury has promised that you will give us, the central bank, money for Basajja Balaba, so you have a letter of comfort to lend him. Basajja Balaba went and borrowed from the central bank.
What you're explaining is just a detail.
No. The central bank never gave him money.
The directive was the central bank. Whether eventually they picked money from Andrew Mwenda is a detail.
That's why there
are minutes of Bank of Uganda saying we will not give him the money.
So this is why I think when you say these issues, let me first explain it in a practical terms.
I make Oscar. No, you wait. You're not the one on the microphone. When they have the discipline to listen to others.
But you are lying.
You see, the point I make is that the Museveni that I know does not operate the way Mwenda and Andrew are describing him. The Museveni I know will appoint Sejusa as coordinator of security. Then he will call ISO and ESO and he will tell them, please don't give him any information. Then Sejusa will go and begin quarreling with the ISO and ESO, thinking that this is the decision taken by them. Yet the decision is taken and communicated on phone as he walks away from a meeting with Museveni. Let me tell you, if Museveni wants a bank to remain, and you know it, you can only pretend. If Museveni says this bank will not be closed, it will not in Uganda, maybe in another country.
Dr.
Okay, so no, let me come to clarify this. You see, Muhammad Zahia can defend this point. If I am a businessman and I have my bank, he needs to give me a contract. I need a contract. My bank can give me a guarantee. There is no way, if my bank gives me a guarantee, in other words, the central bank is the banker for the government of Uganda. If the Secretary of the Treasury has given a commitment to the central bank that I'm going to pay you, why would you as Governor Mutevile refuse to give a letter of comfort? Really, that would be malicious. It is like if my central bank, if my bank called Stanbic Bank has given me a guarantee that I can build, I have a construction company, I can build Katuntu's house. If Katuntu refuses to accept the bank guarantee, because the bank is saying, if Mwenda fails, we shall reimburse you 100%. Why would Katuntu refuse? There was no reason for Mutevile not to give a letter of comfort where he had a commitment from the Secretary of the Treasury that we owe Basajja Balaba this money, we're going to put it in the next budget and pay you. So the central bank never lent him money. He borrowed it from commercial banks against a letter of comfort.
Let's go to Dr. Momoza.
Let's get to the procedures of banking. You know, you are mixing up issues of other institutions and other sectors. Banking sectors, we said earlier, you can't just say, I'm going to start a bank or I'm going to buy this bank. The regulator assesses not just your capital, but also your past ethical and whatever behaviors.
No, your risk.
Your risk, because the risk is embedded in there.
From a shareholding.
Yes, that's why you're going to be saying, we found people to buy crane and the central bank refused. It's not that they didn't have money. What if these are money launderers globally? So who they are, the bank will assess.
Yeah.
Now, when you get money on a guarantee, the guarantor is going to be held accountable. Why didn't the Minister of Finance write to the banks themselves to say lend?
Yeah.
Because the Minister of Finance's credibility to honor, knowing very well the arrears it owes to the private sector, they knew their letter would not be sufficient. So the banks lent on the promise and guarantee of the central bank.
The Constitution will not allow that.
I've received it, exactly.
Because that will amount
exactly
to a financial implication which can only be authorized by Parliament.
So you can see all those.
No Minister of Finance would look and say, lend.
And they do. So that's why we're saying they borrowed actually on the basis of the letter of the governor. This very same thing the governor had said, I don't want to do.
Minuted.
So you cannot say there was a letter from finance. So the law and the procedures in the banking sector would not recognize that letter. No, until the central bank itself has written.
The
central bank. But exactly, it ends there. The board takes responsibility of the bank. Even me, when you write to me as governor and say lend to this particular person, the board of the bank is going to take responsibility. They have a right to say no to the governor's letter. So the procedures there are very, very tight. And you can't just now begin to shift them around. So getting into those situations, you want to compare and say the French banks and what? The minimum capital requirement is gauged on the risks in the economy. The ultimate objective of the central bank is stability of the sector.
This is where I wanted you to go.
Stability of the sector.
We have Ron Nahurira.
Yes.
Nahurira Ronald says the closure of the two banks, AFC and Mercantile Bank, is consequently as a result of unfair policies by the regulator. Undercapitalization of these banks is against the backdrop of raising the paid-up capital of commercial banks from 25 billion to 150 billion.
Yeah.
And the period for doing that was what, 3 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as I said, they were given options. You have 3 years. Give us even a roadmap. When do you intend to hit the 150? Should you see that you can't hit the 150, you can downgrade to 120. You become a tier 2. Or you can even go lower. You can merge. They were given all those conversations to have. What is the central bank looking at? Risks within the economy. Now, the risks in the Ugandan economy are not similar to the ones in the French economy. So you cannot say, but the French and these ones, these are based actually on international laws of Basel laws, but the Basel laws must be customized within the country context. Now, Uganda can decide and say, these guys are lenient, they have set the bar so low. If you don't have sufficient blood in your body, the brain is not going to get the oxygen, you're going to collapse. So the central bank is judging, Andrew Katuntu here is how many kilograms, how much blood should he have. The moment you do not have that minimum blood, the doctors will advise you, go and rest.
Yeah.
Until you acquire the sufficient blood. Now, that is not a subjective question. That the doctor didn't want me to attend the parliament today. No, he's following an objective criteria. You are not going to have. So there is subjective and the objective. And as I said, the minimum for banks being 150, Stanbic is higher because it's a big bank. So there are those kind of discussions.
It is not mathematical that it was arrived at like, it is 1 + 1 and 2. So it's just about the circumstances, which is the reasonable figure for which you would think a commercial bank at that level. Because you know there are tiers. There are tiers. Yes. There is level 1, level 2, and so on. So we are talking about...
You can even become a circle.
You can even... They are all there. Financial
so there's that fellow who asked how long should I keep my money in such a bank? There's here a Gava Ivan using even bigger words, saying at same way I'm saying, okay, this issue at Mwende is raising, it misses the moral hazard that would come with replicating US concepts. Local banks would take excessive risks, fully aware that they will be bailed out by government. So that's one side.
Yeah. By the way, local banks is not the argument.
But also when Semuja and Katundu says those are small banks, don't worry about them. When people are worried about where they will get their money back, how do you deal with that?
But let's go to the figures, which I have. You see, in any bank...
Go to the microphone.
Look here. Fifth around 10-15% of the depositors provide 85 to 90% of the volume of business.
So they are the ones that have lost out.
They are the ones who lose out. But in terms of numbers, the 85 to 90% are smaller depositors, and they are the ones who are actually protected by the law, by the deposit protection fund, that insurance fund. So when you are talking about the real money, people who are going to lose, they are in the 10 to 15%, because though they hold 85 to 90%.
And that's why trust in the banking sector is still strong out there, because you want to protect those smaller people who will be affected massively and lose their deposits. They must not lose their deposit. Stability of the financial sector is priority number one of the central bank. It's not that I need a local bank here. If a local bank is going to introduce weakness, forget it. That's why many people here don't have their children even in local schools.
I am thinking who needs
an economy without getting.
Now that is where economics has trade-offs. You can regulate these fellows.
You can't just say that we don't mind.
You can regulate these fellows. Do you know the central bank can say the central bank has a right to tell a bank you're not going to move this capital out? But the criteria must be, if you needed to be capitalized, your profit.
And I can tell you, if you tell them, they will not come.
But by the way, we have local banks.
One of the reasons is that we're a liberal economy.
We have local banks. Some of them government owned. Fully, 100%.
No.
So when I hear this talk, look at also the other shareholders, just to end on this, because it touches what has been happening of late. People want to set up a cooperative bank. A cooperative bank is supposed to be owned by the cooperatives. One of the criteria that cabinet gave when these people are going to be compensated their money was very clear. What do you intend to do with the money you are going to be compensated? Now, we are reading the billions that went to the cooperative bank. Instead of resolving to say, we are going to use it as capital to re-establish our bank, they chose to eat it. That's a governance issue. So should I trust cooperatives in Uganda to restart their bank when they just messed up money they received, which could have restarted the bank? That's what Bank of Uganda will be looking at. What is your credibility when you get money?
Dr. Homza, cooperative bank was closed. How many years ago?
Yeah, but they have been agitating to start it.
Let's say many years ago. Many years ago.
26 years ago. Does Bank of Uganda have a report on the closure of cooperative bank today?
But Abdu, where I wanted...
Zero. So how do you even talk about reopening a bank? And Bank of Uganda doesn't have a report. But this has not accounted for the assets and liability it took over. 26 years.
That's a different point. These guys have been knocking on the door of government to restart their bank.
They just don't know what they're doing.
Just
and
bring
that's
your
the
capital
biggest problem with Uganda.
But Abdu,
we just gossiping too much.
Abdu and Fred, the line you are taking against Fred, I listened carefully. My producer here, Patricia, is standing here for us to go to a break. But before she does so, she had 2 million in a bank. And Mwenda had 100 million in a bank.
Yes.
The government has protected
both up to 10. For height is 100%,
and actually, it took me to threaten to sue the fund, the deposit protection fund. They used to advertise on these radios that all of your funds are protected.
That was wrong.
Until I told them, no, you are misleading the public. It is only to the extent of 10 million shillings. That's when they changed that advert.
We stop for a break. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyamsoke, welcoming Agatha Atuhaire, Agatha with H-E-R. You are most welcome. She actually, she's late because she was supposed to come after 30 minutes. Most welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yes, you kind of missed out on the first topic. We'll revisit it at conclusion time.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes.
It was in able hands.
It was in able hands.
Yes.
So second topic we have for today is who is happy in Uganda? Because if everyone is protesting, I think Semuju is protesting Mwenda is protesting Semuju. Traders are protesting. This time I couldn't work out. I think it is not EFRIS. Interns are protesting. You and the Gen Zs are protesting. What are all these protests about? In the meantime, Chep Tegei, at least he protested in a good way. He Cheptegei.
At least there's something to be happy about.
This is a different one. Yeah.
First of all, I keep being misrepresented. I didn't protest at all. It was the Gen Zs and a few of their friends who are older, who were inspired by the Gen Zs.
No, you
and
supported their protest. You wanted them to protest.
Yes, I supported them so that they get out of detention. That one I did very much, yes.
But without getting into the particulars of their protests, what happens to Uganda? Are we going to become a country that's protesting all the time?
I think, yes, when you have leaders that don't care about our grievances, that will tell. Teachers had been told some time back to go and graze cows, and now the traders were told to go and plant pineapples, I think. So if you have leaders that don't listen to people's grievances, that ridicule them, that arrogantly say, we don't care about your grievances, you can go and try, people are not going to be happy. I imagine you have a home Oscar, so if in that home you are not providing, you are the one in charge of the properties and assets of the home. But
I keep saying I'm not a good example to use with bad cases. Every time you have a good case is when you should
you're
use me as an
not
example.
providing school fees, you're not providing food and shelter, and people are telling you, we are not happy about this, we are starving, and you say, I don't care. People in that home are not going to be happy. And that's what is happening in Uganda. I think that our leaders should listen more to our concerns and say we will address them. When the president addressed Ugandans, I think before the protests, he still trivialized people's issues. Said you cannot march. People's businesses are going to be disrupted. We do not want that. But he is not saying, I know the reasons you want to go and march, and I'm going to act on them. The same as interns. I think the issues of interns have been here for so long. They also went on streets. They begged Parliament to at least cut money somewhere else and cater for interns. But we never see things that affect an ordinary person as priority in this country. So yeah, that's how you'll find every group that is unhappy. I dealt with the protesters a lot, visiting them, trying to find sureties, being in court. So I saw it's no longer there used to be this talk of Banyankore bari muchintu but you see, this protest, for me, when I was seeing that, I saw protesters that were from all over the country. So the unhappiness, the grievances are everywhere. I saw protesters that were, someone called me and said, and you know that those boys are our people. This is someone in security circles. Our people means NRM. So our security agencies and people there are shamelessly partisan. They never even see anything wrong with that. There were many NRM people in that jail. They are still there. So when you start to see that, you stop thinking that it's Agatha who is quarrelsome, who has a problem with me, or it's Easterners who are complaining, or it's Northerners who think they are not getting a share. No, it's the whole country that thinks that it's not being run well, that thinks its resources are not being put to good use, that thinks things that go to the core of our lives are not paid attention to.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Andrew. You've heard Agatha says it is likely that we'll have more protests rather than none.
Well, I have two issues with the protests. I personally think that the contradiction of protest is that I think the protests are largely a manifestation of the success of Museveni rather than a failure. If Museveni was a very big failure, there would be less protests. Certainly, if you go to Somalia or South African Republic, or South Sudan, you are unlikely to find there.
Rwanda.
You are likely to find. You are unlikely to find.
The list.
You are unlikely to find. He's heckling.
You are coming. You get your chance on the microphone.
He's a heckler. So that is one aspect. That what has happened in Uganda is after so many years of sustained economic growth, you have a middle class that has grown in urban areas whose expectations are very high, but you have government performance that falls far below the expectations of this educated exposed middle class, and therefore you have a resultant protest. Because if you look at whether it's in Times, professors at Makerere University, traders, whichever place you look at, if we were to do what Fred likes, a statistical analysis of the purchasing power of their incomes over the years, say since 1990, there has been a consistent increase in the real wage of a middle class Ugandan. Where there's a professor at university, you can adjust their money to inflation or to purchasing power, you will find that there has been a great and qualitative increase in incomes. What happens in societies like this is that as societies in urban areas grow and prosper, the people most angry with Museveni are perhaps those who have benefited the most from him, because now they have access to internet, they can buy smartphones, they drive nice cars, and then he has potholes all over the road, he has mud, you wash your car, before you have moved 2 kilometers, it's that as it was. So one of the sources of protest is NRM success. The other source of protest, for me, marching on parliament.
So NRM invested in getting protests.
I want you guys to study South Korea. Between 1960 and 1990, South Korea went through the most rapid transformation in the history of economic transformation. But along the manufacturing plants producing cars and electronics and semiconductors and all this was growing a labor militancy, student movements, youth anger, and the country was paralyzed by protests. Between 1980 and 1990, South Korea was losing about 18 million man-hours of work per year because of demonstrations and protests until it democratized. So success is likely to create protests more than failure. But Mobutu's Congo, which was economy contracting, or Nyerere's Tanzania, there were no protests because they had not created an educated, exposed, and well-organized labor class or student movement or youth movement. But I want to come to a point of protest against corruption, because I think that Ugandans, especially on capital gang, we need to be analytical. So we have a parliament. My granddaughter Agatha here, they have been on social media, they have exposed gross corruption at parliament. May I have questions? That parliament is composed 100% of democratically elected representatives of the people. So I would imagine, therefore, that what it does should reflect every MP has a vested interest in being re-elected. First, we have about 100-something members of parliament who are in the opposition, out of 529. If a speaker has been caught stealing so blatantly, why hasn't anybody raised a petition of censure or impeachment? Why haven't 10 MPs signed it? That's the first question you should ask yourself. 2, if you read the parliament correctly, I find that about 50% of members of parliament, Monta reported, don't earn their salary. It is deducted at source because of debts. When the president went to Bukedia, he said the same thing, that MPs are saddled with the debt. Another about of the 50% remaining, 80% receive less than half of their salaries. They are also indebted. It goes to pay debts. So the MP we expect to be very corrupt is actually the same MP who is heavily indebted. What causes this? We have 2 MPs here. They will tell you, you go to your constituency, they want to build a church, they want to build a hospital, a clinic, a bridge, a funeral, a wedding, whatever it is. The MP is inundated with so many demands on their personal income to meet the needs of the electorate.
Last week I went to meet with an MP in one morning. I think it was a Wednesday morning, and I found about 50 people already in his compound.
So
he has
if your MP is saddled, because this is also a cultural
the
issue.
house.
If your MP, first to win an election, you need to raise a lot of money. I'm told that the average cost of an election now is 600 million. There are those in Western Uganda who spend 7 billion, and those maybe who spend 100, but the average is about 600 million. Yes, I know. I'm telling you, in Western Uganda, the contests are serious. So the question becomes, how does an MP plan to recoup their investment and also to meet the needs of the electorate? So I believe that Uganda's democratic process, as designed, encourages members of parliament and the speaker and others to be corrupt and not hold the executive to account. All the theories we read from books don't apply. So if Agatha and others want to march onto parliament, what authority do they have to challenge the decisions of the elected representatives of the people who elected them and empower them to say that? Should we listen to the protesters or the elected representatives of the people? Whose voice is most important? For me, those are the questions, because when we answer these questions, we'll be able to design a democratic and electoral system. Hold a second. Because when we answer these contradictions, we will be able to design an electoral and democratic process.
Agatha, take notes. You'll come back later.
That insulates MPs from cannibalism by the electorate, and therefore the forms of accountability that our democratic process will encourage are different from the current system.
Okay. I need you to pause there. Dr. Mumuza, Agatha here says there will be more protests, and in fact she encourages that there should be more protests. Andrew says there are... I'm as moderator. I am going to be charged with inciting violence. I did not say that at any point. I just said people have grievances, and if they are not resolved, people will look for ways of expressing them. I had not thought about the lawyering aspect of it. So Agatha seems to want them to protest, but she has not encouraged protesting. Is that a good way of putting it?
She's only saying when dark clouds come, it is likely to rain. She's not the one who has caused the rain.
Okay. The apt way of presenting it. And then Mwenda here, Fred, Mwenda here then says that it is the success of the NRM that is causing the protests.
Well, you can say yes and no. And depends on which end of the stick he's holding. Let's get back to our analogy, and we've been working with IGAD on matters of risk. And one thing I learned in those conversations was if somebody strikes a match and lights dry grass, who do you blame? The one with the matchstick, the one who brought the dry grass, or the one who made the grass dry in the first place? Where we have come from, the bank closures, is really a small tip of the iceberg, because when a bank closes, everyone feels it. But out there are companies closing every day. Some of them even turn up in the situation of the banks themselves before closures. And we all complain, why are banks selling? So when the economy has those struggles that is not offering people opportunities, the grass is growing. And certainly the lions are going to migrate, because the buffaloes are migrating, the antelopes are migrating. So you want to go back, what are the underlying causes? Trying to stop demonstrations without dealing with what in the first place is causing these tensions. We'll go back to the very same question that brought Clinton into leadership. Economy is stupid. Most of these young people are not asking for his position. They wouldn't want to. They are not coming to parliament so that you leave and they join in. But somehow they associate parliament.
Exactly. That is not true. Do you know how many young people in parliament today?
Of course, that is the other part. But
What are you talking about?
But I am saying the 1,000, the people who filled the streets in Kenya are not asking for positions in parliament. They know how many positions are there. They are not there. And that's why when they came to parliament, they said, you guys, the bill you have just passed. No, the bill you have just passed, that was the question in Kenya. We don't agree with it. And when the bill moved on, they had other things to put on the table. What is happening downtown? The EFRIS, or whatever is not even EFRIS, the traders. You listed all of them. So when you look at the complaints by most of these people, they are not going to be resolved by quashing them. And that's why we're saying when the dark clouds have come, please don't build your tent in a swamp. Move to higher ground. It's going to be raining and there are going to be floods. Now the question is, how do we stop people disrupting the fundamentals of the system so that banks don't close? And as we discussed Oscar on Thursday, was it Thursday?
Yes, this week.
We said some of the causes of bank closures, a non-performing asset is a loan taken by a business person from a bank, and he intends to come and pay back. Now, when this person fails to pay back, it's not that he actually decided, I will not pay back that bank. But really, the economy turned down the corner, and this fellow failed. So part of stopping banks closing is how do we develop a versatile economy that meets the needs of the multitudes. You boss came out and gave us the numbers. Every year we are adding 1.1 million people into Uganda. Are we generating that much in terms of opportunities? 23 million of these young people are below the age of 17. Give it another 10 years. They will now have reached a level of saying, I can no longer go to my uncle, Semuju. I also need to be seen to stand in my own space. The examples you said, you don't want to be used in examples of failure. These young people really don't want to be in that situation as well. So part of their demonstration, we've got to look at it, it's not from the political angle, it's actually socio-economic pressures that they believe me and you, who are supposed to be planning for the economy, planning for governance, have failed them. That's why they will go now to parliament on a governance issue. They will go to those wherever they can, but really they need to be somewhere. And they need to be listened to. And mode of engagement, how do they engage? Maybe we haven't given those windows. So for me, it's an economy stupid question. The 1992 campaign slogan for Bill Clinton.
Abdul, Levi Yaru here, always in a fight with Agatha on X.
Mumuza is an advisor to people who are running the economy.
Yeah, maybe they don't take his advice. The Levi Yaru says...
people who have been advised, stop taking milk, stop eating meat and sugar. We have continued. So do you blame the doctor?
His workers continue advising them.
Yes. So this one, Yaru says that here, leaderless, faceless, borderless. One would have to bewitch the entire country to believe in such protests. Otherwise, it would be easy for one to board a bus whose driver is headless.
And by the way, there were also demonstrations in Bangladesh. You remember what was the situation there?
Yeah.
People had put a cap on jobs. That 30% of the jobs will go to those who fought for independence or their children. Now, you have limited opportunities, and you want to use laws, legislation, and whatever other means to block people out. You are going to attract some of these tensions. And the World Economy, as she has mentioned, the dark clouds are not just over Uganda.
Well,
they're all over the world.
In that one, people have lost
the brilliant ones will be able to maneuver through. Those who are going to sleep and wait for I don't know what, we are going to have more of these tensions across the region, not just in Uganda.
Abdul, protests?
Yeah, I want to agree with Andrew, but to some extent. You see, whenever society gets conscious of certain things, it will certainly react the way we are seeing. I mean, it's just natural.
So you're agreeing on the part of NRM being successful?
I say to some extent. Just mark my words, I'm speaking plain English. So, I'll give you an example. Look at the protests in Kampala and look at all the people who were arrested. What sort of people are they? Were they hawkers? Or were they the Gen Zs, people with university degrees, Twitter accounts, and so on? Just look at the entire of them. Then you analyze. You know, I mean, when you see these protests, why are they not down deep in Butambala? And then they are being led by university students, people who own smartphones and is communicating digital. That is a class which is conscious, enlightened, and those ones, if for example, let me give you an example. I've seen young people, they start with a phone. Say, no, now he's moving to another phone. He's moving to another phone. And so having a phone, a smartphone is not good enough. He needs now a certain class of phone. And he will protest, actually. Taxes about this 46 and so on, all those sort of clans and so on. You get it? And it will be going to be a very big issue. They will go on Twitter, they will go on talk shows like this, and they're really debating on that. So that you can't avoid. It is going to happen. And those protests will continue because it's natural. People will want more than what they have. It's a natural phenomenon. You can't avoid it. You may not explain it the way Andrew does, that it's about success in RM and so on, but it's a level of consciousness, level of education, and even a level of wanting to be better than what you are, irrespective of where you are. That's why if somebody drives a small Corolla car, he really complains more than the one who is wishing to get a motorbike. But he already have a Corolla. He wants to have an X6 like Andrew Mwenda drives. It's natural. So those we are going to face, and society comes, you'll have those protests, Oscar. However, today, do we see circumstances which people should be complaining about? I mean, the blind can see. There are issues which have to be addressed. They may not be addressed, I imagine, like Kenya tried to do it, because I think they bungled it up. But I'm sure any leader should be listening He may not be saying, okay, I'm going to do this one, I'm abandoning this one, and so on. But when they go back to their boardrooms, when they go back to their meetings, I am sure that their mind is on those issues. Because you cannot avoid them. You cannot. For example, Andrew says he was a strategic advisor. Today, you must handle the issue of employment of younger people. Because the more you let them unemployed, they become dissatisfied. They have gone to school. Some of them have university.
The tent you found in the MP's place, you can only dismantle it by empowering
absolutely by empowering communities and so on. So, as you know, people who run government, as they should go back, they should be able to address those issues. They may not be able to say, okay, like Ruto did, because once you do that, then you can create other problems and so on. I don't think he sorted the problem out the way he handled it, but he has to address them. So to me, the issue of corruption is real. It has to be addressed, whether we want it or not. And I'm sure everybody is thinking about it. How do we handle this monster called corruption? But it may not be addressed the way sometimes the protesters want to be addressed, because the types of governance and governments and leadership, there are leaders who don't handle things that way. Because, Oscar, many politicians do one thing, Andrew Mwenda, they are populist. Many politicians are demagogues. You know, they prescribe cheap solution to very complex problems. This one do like this, then society is so but demagoguery really. I don't want to be rude.
You have here Caesar tells you on X, formerly Twitter, that maybe Abdu is missing the point. It's not only the march to Parliament that where there are protests by there are more protests by the less elite of society, even in villages, about land, about business environment. So a lot of people are unhappy. Ibra.
That one is right, actually, especially the issue of land. And that one is going to be a bigger problem. Sorry, Ibra, before you come in, I think you need to get a whole Saturday we discuss this issue of land. Let me tell you why. And this is Dr. Mumzas, this is Andrews, who are strategic thinkers, should be thinking about it. The population of this country is increasing. Land is not increasing. It's not elastic. So pressures on land ownership and utilization can only get worse unless we start planning for it now.
Yeah.
Let me begin with corruption, Oscar.
First answer the question in a yes or no. Do you think there'll be more protests, or the government, President, as usually say, President Museveni is going to sort this out?
Uganda is a military state. It's not Kenya. I don't know who Museveni will deploy next time they call for another protest. Maybe the jets will be in the air. So that situation you deal with. Where we are now, I think a biggest part of the corruption is deliberate. And that one, whether you protest or not, until you've removed the administration, it will not go away. Let me begin with an example. In 2020, we did a budget in Parliament. There was a supplementary budget to deal with COVID. I was not in Parliament, but I later learned that during the consideration of the budget, Parliament had given each MP 20 million to deal with COVID-related issues in their constituency. I was attacked because I said I am not returning the money. When Museveni said he returned the money, what did I say then?
We were given that money.
Eventually, I was forced to take it back.
Yeah.
Every day, when we were under lockdown, my gate, people started knocking my gate at 5. They want Posho. I was buying Posho from Mandela here. Every day, I started by one time. Even Ofono was helping me to get maize to go and. So I said, you see, how will people hear me in Chira that I am rejecting 20 million and I can't buy them Posho, and this is a matter of life and death? And I told the elite at that time, the theory and practice. In fact, many, including my friends, told me, "Semju, you have destroyed yourself. You're not coming back into Parliament." But the ordinary people who were looking for posho 2 kilograms, I told them that time that actually I want all the MPs to give me the money, those who want to return it, because I faced a crisis that I needed to deal with. So, and I want to deal with the issue of the official corruption in the budget. The
official corruption?
Yes, in the budget. Because the same point I made in Parliament, and I was attacked by everybody. If you have money you have put in the budget officially, that from the president to the speaker to the prime minister to the chief justice, each will have donation. And then the complaint is how the money is wired, how the manner in which money is wired on accounts. I asked people at that time, because the target was the Speaker of Parliament, understandably, I needed to know how Museveni picks money from the bank. Because if you look at the budget of donation, Museveni has 136 billion. The rest have smaller amounts. How does Museveni pick that 132 billion from the bank that he keeps giving in envelopes in what? Sometimes you complain against things that are simple. Because for me, it is not the manner. It's even in Parliament, when I was responding to the budget, I said we need to remove this money altogether. I was defeated. The money remains. Even this budget of this financial year, the offices that I have mentioned, the total amount is for donation is 162 billion. Why should Museveni of 136 billion go and force Anita Mongo of 3 billion? No, I'm talking about donation. I haven't gone to corporate social responsibility. So why should Museveni be an ally in fighting someone they are doing the same thing? So, but Museveni, I see when he's speaking. So the official corruption in the budget is a political issue that's not going to go away. That time when they are forcing us to return 20 million because of the public pressure, what Museveni did was to give NRM MPs 40 million. He said this one, since the public is complaining, you take the 20, but you don't lose it. Here is another 20, I am repressing. So you take the 20 and also take 20. But in the public, Museveni was on TV. This Parliament, I must deal with. They are interfering with they are interfering with the priorities of my budget. And I said, you see, these things. Someone who is giving MPs 40 million to return the 20 is on TV actually addressing that I am dealing with these MPs. So these things are not as simple as people want to look at them. So the only corruption that Museveni will fight.
So they were requested to return 20, and then they got 40.
There was public pressure.
It wasn't request.
So he called the NRM MPs.
Ordered to return the 20.
He called the NRM MPs and said...
and then the NRM MPs got 40.
They got 40 because he said, you take back the 20 since there is too much noise in the public. Take their 20, but I'm also giving you 20. Because even that 20 they had eaten. So that's why he was giving them. Even the one to return, it is him who was giving them. But they are also angry we are not returning. He said, okay, don't worry. I'll also give you another 20. So the official corruption in the budget, people giving themselves the money for corporate social responsibility, for donation, for this and that. When I was looking at the budget this financial year, you had about 5 trillion shilling in things that you can avoid. Special meals, fuel, vehicle, this and that. Maybe a little bit of that can reduce. But money that goes to do politics, I am not sure that Museveni is going to listen to you, Agatha, and others. You can protest. He will do what he did with MPs to appease the public. He will end up in MPs. They are all at the door of the cracker returning the money. But behind the scene, he was saying, don't worry, you return and then you come and pick. So as they were returning, they were going here, Nakasero, office of Kasule Lumumba, and picking. So the official corruption cannot go away. I think the corruption that Museveni will fight is individual corruption. An MP calls an organization to pick money. An MP influences a budget because he wants to be given a percentage. And I'm not saying it is true because I have colleagues who are in court. That one he can fight. But the one that is engineered by him of staying in power, of compromising Parliament, that one he will bring him on, but they will be on the street because the Parliament is doing his bidding. But will the protests stop? They may not. Why? If you look at the budget, Oscar, next financial year, government has a budget of 72 trillion. That budget is going to be funded mainly by borrowing. because the debt that is due next year is 34 trillion. So more than half of the budget is going to be dealing with the debt servicing. That's why the money for interns, I don't think that Museveni maybe he needs to further borrow. I have been speaking to policemen and soldiers of lower ranks, because in the budget we included the 90 billion shilling to enhance their salaries. The promise officially communicated was that the lower ranks will be enhanced by 25%. They have just given them 70,000, which is about 9%. Those who are calling me almost daily from all over, they're extremely angry. I don't know if we'll have a protest of military, and that will be a difficult one.
No, I'll give you some information. Last week, I think there was an urgent meeting between Minister Mululi Mukasa and the security chiefs, both the army, police, and prisons, and they were raising that issue because, whereas for us we can go on industrial action, those people, if they try to go on industrial action, you know what happens. So I think they're trying to address it.
So the complaint is that you guys promised us 25% salary enhancement. You are giving us not even half. As I said, you may have them one way also protesting. The interns, in the budget presented, we actually thought they are going to deal with intern. I didn't know that they were actually dealing with the backlog, because you have interns who have not been receiving training. Because it's not just training, because these interns you are going to pay them, because they are the ones who are running public facilities. And
they are posted all over. They're not in their home area.
So they are the ones who are running public facilities. So it's not that you are looking just money for training them. You are looking money to pay them. That money is always not included in the budget.
It's always actually to facilitate them to come.
Not just the ordinary facilitation, because it ranges between 2 to 4 million.
But remember, they might sleep close by to Mulago because they are on call. They cannot say, me, I've found like a small unit.
If Mulago, you might be posted in Jinja.
So they come to private facilities, which, as you know, near where these facilities are located, accommodation is expensive and many other things. So a bulk of that is really facilitation.
So I am not an economist, but I need someone tell me, because we keep saying the economy is growing. The economy is growing. This economy cannot service its own debt. It has no money to meet the basic needs of
the 11 million extra entrants per year.
Yeah, but you will hear the economists. They will be celebrating actually that that's what I was asking in Parliament. If you read the reports from National Bureau of Statistics, they are telling you multidimensional poverty is increasing. Karamoja at 80%, actually at 60%. But after presenting those reports, they will say we should celebrate. Now we are in a lower middle income country. So the money to deal with all this, that's why I say they are related. So people who are deprived, they will look at you as an MP. How much money do you earn? Is there anything that you do for you to deserve what you get, and me I get less? So the conclusion that actually many of you are useless, you are doing nothing, but
and even you, as he said, you are indebted. We might be looking at you because you get the 20 million
part
based on your burdens.
And
is what
some
Andrew
of us
said.
who have the details,
yes,
we laugh.
Yes.
Agatha, conclude on this one. As usual, people on X, Levi Eyaru, and
what do you have with Levi Eyaru that I don't know?
And as soon as you start,
you like people that attack me.
He's
the one whose messages you read every day.
I like to read them when you're here.
So I noted a few things that I thought I should respond to or seek clarification. The first is Andrew is always saying interesting things when he says protests actually speak to the achievements, successes of NRM. I didn't quite get it, but I'll continue to the next one, where Andrew asked whose voice is more important. That Parliament is a representative of the people, but as the people actually who are protesting, the voice of our the voice of our representatives is more important than us who sent them to actually represent us.
No, you are a tiny minority representing a few elites in Kampala. Okay. Not even 1% of the people who voted planned to demonstrate. Not even 0.1%.
And not everyone who didn't demonstrate didn't have grievances. People didn't demonstrate for so many reasons. So Article 1 of the Constitution says power belongs to the people, not their representatives. So our voice is more our voice is more important. And that's why actually when these people we don't think they are representing us well, we vote them out. So if you are there, and I have been saying that this parliament is corrupt, and you, the people I voted to represent me, you're not raising it, I am going to raise it. So my voice is more important.
How many people voted in the last election?
7 million.
Conclude on what you're saying.
So anyway.
How many were these guys who are trying to protest?
What do you mean? Yes, you are you're doing that deliberately.
Honestly, I think
to say that
the people threatening to protest are a small community of Gen Zs on social media with smartphones, university degrees, based in Kampala. They constitute a very small fragment of the electorate.
Yeah, and it's not about percentages.
The people who went to wage a war and led to the death of 500,000.
They were 27.
They were 27. But there are many people who supported it.
Or if they were more, they had 27 guns.
You know, by the way, Andrew says these things not because he doesn't know, but he's deliberately misleading people.
Because he has problems.
Go on.
But that's
they did not go to the bush to be elected. They wanted the power militarily, not democratically.
And the people who are on the streets, like Fred said about the Gen Zs in Kenya, were not on the streets to be elected in parliament.
No.
We are on the streets because the people we elected are not doing what they should do for us as the people.
So, Agatha, where do you come from? Because I want to know whether you are the constituency you come from in Nyabushozi or in Shema or in Kanungu or in Kaperabiong, where they are protesting.
Some people here have been saying they're protesting in Kabale and other places, especially about land.
You see, what Andrew doesn't understand is that
these guys were not to protest about land.
The things we are writing about, some come from those people. When we are writing about Chinyamatama, the people in Chinyamatama's constituents send us pictures that we put on X. When we are writing about a complete process of Rwanda, the people there send us pictures. This is the school, this is the hospital, we are suffering. So if we are saying for us we are the ones that are brave enough to go on and brave the tanks that are all over the place, it does not mean we are the only ones that feel aggrieved, that have those grievances we are talking about. And like Honorable Semujut said, the 27 people that went and fought and killed people and came to power, they were not even 0.1% of the population of Uganda that time. So you're not going to say that because only 100 Gen Zs were on the street, you are not. It's not the people. Those are the ones that could go on the street.
Okay.
And the other. No, let me. This guy
finish.
took many of my minutes.
Many of your minutes. So there's a Martin Defever Ojara. He says, "Why don't you switch off Andrew's microphone so that he stops bullying Agatha?" And I want to tell Martin, Agatha is not particularly bullyable, so don't worry too much about her.
I am happy that Martin is defending me. There's a tendency of attempting to bully me. I might not be bullyable, but it's not for lack of attempting. So the other thing is that. What I say about protests is that if they come, I am going to say I understand why they have come. And like I said in the beginning, is that we've put out there information that shows there is gross corruption. And people and agencies and institutions that are supposed to act have not acted. If people go and act, for me in journalism, that's what is called impact, that my work has impact, that people are actually saying we are going to act on the information that Agora and other people have given us. The iPhone example, I found it very disturbing. And that's what I call trivializing people's grievances. When you say that people will always want more, that the Gen Zs, the young people, might have iPhone 11 and complain that we want iPhone 15 and complain about the taxes, it's not what these people are talking about. You guys should really listen to people. It's people who come. I saw photos of people who kept saying, I'm going on the streets in case I don't come back. They were saying, my mother died because there was no medicine in the hospital. They were saying, I dropped out of school because I couldn't afford it. They were saying, I've been on the street because I failed to find a job. Now, those are actually existential people cannot survive with those basics. You cannot make it about an iPhone or wanting more. And that's true. Our leaders are the ones that want more. It's not the people. They are the ones that want. In this term, a car for an MP will be 100 million. In the next, it will be 200 million. In the next, it will be 500 million. President Museveni that Semuju spoke about here.
Where I disagree with you, these MPs, we have an MP who bought 4 ambulances. He got the money for the vehicle, but added more.
No, they bought taxis and labeled them ambulances. An ambulance is a unique creature.
That's a different problem. It's the problem of people failing.
If you are going to see those of us who bought the 200, they are less than 10% even.
For us as people, we are saying, couldn't this 200 million? The problem is that you guys are not addressing the issue. The MPs are supposed to be there to appropriate money for hospitals. Now, if you fail to do that, people will come and ask you for ambulances. So the problem is starting from there, that we do not have services, and because the MPs play the biggest role in those services being there. You cannot say that let's ignore 500 given for a car because it has bought ambulances. I am thinking
that was not the intention.
I am thinking, can we say that no, let's appropriate this money to this and this and that because that is your role, because that's your mandate. So when you see all that and you compare with an iPhone, I really do not get that example, and I find sort of mocking people's actual problems. Now, lastly, and very lastly, I think Honorable Semuju talked about the budget. Yeah, I think that's where the problems come from. That you have a parliament that has bent its back to be stepped on, that has lost the ground, the moral authority, and the power to hold the executive in check as they are supposed to do. When the budget comes and people are just caring about what do I get for my constituents and not for Uganda as a whole, when President Museveni sends it back because there have been corruption issues, some people are in jail. And he told us here, many people voted again for the bill, the appropriation bill, when it was brought back, because there's a rope hanging over them that, you are going to go to jail. So if the MPs want their power back, I think they should claim it. They should start by standing their ground. They should start by having a moral authority to criticize the executive or to hold it accountable. Thank you.
Okay. Oscar, please let me come in on this.
Hold on. We have 15 minutes left, so I want you to incorporate in the next 15 minutes, and then when you get a chance to speak, you will add in those extra comments. Let's start with Semuju here, a member of parliament, then Abdu Katuntu, about a tsar, presidential advisor, head of, I don't know that he's now the head of URA or advising URA. Did you, members of parliament, interview him as should happen, or presidential advisors are not interviewed, verified? They are not.
Talking about this one, who
Mr. Kaleme
once charged himself.
I was convicted of tax fraud by the anti-corruption court. He has been appointed to head the anti-corruption effort.
Let me tell you, Oscar.
The anti-tax fraud effort.
Let me tell you how, I don't know if all governments work that way. In Monta, we did a story when Museveni was starting Operation Wembley. Museveni wrote to Mururi Mukasa, and he said, I am creating Operation Wembley. It will be headed by Kano Kayanja because he knows these things of robbers. That was in the letter. I am appointing Kano Kayanja because he knows these things of robbers to head Operation Wembley. I'll give you another example, too.
So in other words, these things work.
I'll give you other examples. I will not make the conclusions. This guy of Day Pharmaceutical, Magora, he was arrested in India together with Mawanda, my friend who is in charge of discipline in Mwenda's new political organization in Pirao, but he's in jail. And then Isaac Amusomba. Eventually Magora goes to a court in India because of the way he had been arrested, and he wins $50 million. Kenya refuses to release the money, and Museveni spoke to Ruto and the money was released. 10 million remained in Kenya, 10 million here was, 20 million was given to NRM. And when I speak NRM, this time I don't want to put names. And then Magora went with the 20. Eventually Magora now runs a pharmaceutical. Museveni and Ruto went to visit it, but that is his background. Arrested in India, and the accusation was that he was extorting money from an Indian. Mwenda's friend, Sudhir, was arrested by Major Katafire for money laundering at Entebbe. So Museveni likes working with people like those. I don't know what experience they give him or what they have in common, but he likes working with people like those. I said I will not make a conclusion. I will leave that matter. I said he works with those people because Magora now is a beneficiary of 700 billion shilling to establish a pharmaceutical. And you need to know what happened the day Museveni went to visit during COVID. They poured chemicals inside and told Museveni, oh, there's too much chemical, the president cannot enter. But Museveni came back and again sent the money. You know, this one of Kofi, who constructed the factory in the hill in Ntungamo. I think it will come down the next time the rain begins to Gumi. So those people who are like that, Museveni likes them. I don't know, as I said, I don't know what is common between him and those people.
So much if he has not talked about Museveni, then he has not spoken.
We are talking about someone who has made the appointment. You want me to speak about you, Mwenda? Are you the one who appointed the guy?
Okay, you've already spoken.
He was inspired by this Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ. Why don't you talk about God?
I have spoken about your friend. I have said your friend today. Now he was arrested.
Honorable Semujan Mwenda, we are out of time.
You see, there's something I fundamentally disagree with President Museveni. We have a government and a government structure with government institutions set up by both the Constitution and other relevant laws. Whether you're talking about institutions that fight corruption, you have IGG, you have CID, you have all of them are in place. These are government institutions. You cannot now create a parallel government against your own government. I mean, there is land protection unit, there is the set out something, there is what. So we now have two parallel governments. And what does that entail? One, you demoralize people who have been legitimately appointed to perform some functions. Two, even the resources we have to fight corruption are now spread out in very many institutions or offices. So it doesn't make economic sense. Maybe it does, Dr. Mumza advised, because you cannot do what we call a duplication of roles. What you need to do, strengthen the institutions that are already in place. Even before you start if you think, what is the gentleman's name? That one? If Kalemera is a czar, as you are talking, put him in the IGG's office and he'll sort that problem out for you. But State House is now another government. They are around, I don't know how many parallels. You have my friend, the general, what is his name? Isoke? Is this okay?
Corruption unit. Then there is investor protection unit.
Of Kalnaka.
Then there is the land protection unit. Then the environment protection unit. Then there is the infrastructure management unit.
So I don't conclude. I really don't appreciate that sort of governance or running a government, because one, now everybody thinks if you want something to be done, you don't go to the mainstream government office. You have to run to these ad hoc institutions, and that's where they have even the resources. IGG is already crying about resources. It doesn't have enough resources and so on, both human and money. Now the human resource goes to another ad hoc office. The level of accountability, you can't be sure. First of all, it is not, that office is not even in the budget, in the work plan of government.
Okay.
So I just don't understand some of these issues.
Agatha, then Mwenda, then Dr. Mumza will have final word.
I have the same.
You have 2 minutes.
I agree with Abdu for the first time
Yeah.
since I started
Spectacular.
coming with the gang. So first of all, these are illegal outfits. They are illegal. Whatever they do should be null and void. But most importantly, Abdu said, instead of creating others, strengthen. No, don't even strengthen, but do not take away what they have done. When Betty Kamya comes and says, I am, as IGG, I am suggesting to do this to curb corruption, and he said, don't touch people. So you're not even just not strengthening her, you are undermining her. And why is she there? Why are we paying money? Why are taxpayers paying her salary and whatever runs the IGG's office? So you go and create others, and you keep taking money that you want to save to these other illegal outfits, and you think that you are resolving a problem by that. And even when you create 1, 2, 3, 4, and you see that there's no difference, you continue doing the same thing, because the latest is now that one. It's called what? URA what? Intelligence or tax intelligence something. But
don't bite your tongue.
Why don't you now?
It is that one.
Why don't you ask yourself? But also we forget an important detail, that it is headed by a corruption convict. This person was convicted of corruption, but you're bringing them to now be the magic.
Not corruption, tax fraud.
But you have brought him to actually avert the same tax evasion and whatever tax related.
Takes a thief to catch a thief. That's Museveni's philosophy.
So for me, I think many people in this government take Ugandans for granted. I see people on social media asking, when they see us with ears, they think we are goats. You are clearly not interested in curbing corruption, because you are the biggest beneficiary of this corruption. Even the corruption of others benefits President Museveni. The reason now we talk about the corruption of MPs and Anita Among, and they just selectively pick Akamba and Mawanda and leave others, is that their corruption benefits him. Is that the speaker's corruption.
Thank you.
The speaker goes, and I'll give you one last piece of information.
Running out of
the
time.
speaker goes and says, I used this money to neutralize the opposition. and that's okay. Thank you.
Andrew.
So now,
Bless you.
first of all, let me, at the point, as I wait a check from State House, let me say, I think that Museveni has presided over a very successful government in terms of the economy. There are many problems with Uganda's economic growth, but overall the size of the economy has grown, and many Ugandans have gotten better. No. We have seen countries like Tanzania from 1961 to 1985.
Even a dead clock is correct twice a day.
So I'm being heckled. So
And
we have witnessed Tanzania between 61 and 84 lost
when
about
you go to
60%.
X and Twitter after the show, you see those comments are not endearing you to many listeners.
Well, I don't come here to make listeners vote for me. I come to express my opinions about my convictions, many of which are not popular. So I'm not a politician. So I was saying that
You mind about your character.
it is not true that an economy can continue to grow the way Uganda's economy has grown. Many economies, like in Tanzania from 61 to 84 under Nyerere, the economy was shrinking year in, year out, and they lost 60% of their GDP. People became poorer. Even Uganda between 1971 and 1987 had a shrinking economy by and large, except a small spot between 1981 and 84. So economy can go down. Museveni, I can give him credit for presiding over sustained economic
because
growth.
of time issues, go
Yes.
straight to the.
Yes. So,
yeah.
well, but the other point I was going to say, if you are Museveni and there are protests, there are two ways. There's the strategic way to resolve protests is what Fred is talking about, that you must create opportunities, although opportunities themselves will create protests of a different type. But in the short term, how do you handle protests? And I think this is what Ruto failed to understand. In the short term, that is tactically. The tactical response to protest is repression. It is not accommodation. And Ruto tried to do. Yes, I'm telling you. Ruto tried to do
That I
accommodation.
understand.
Ruto tried accommodation and withdrew the bill. Has it stopped the protest? Because people will bring new issues now. They're saying they want him out.
Yeah.
So I think that Museveni's strategy is correct. Repression. Then in the long term, you can address the sources of...
In the long term, we are all dead.
Yeah, but the final thing I want to say, I think that sometimes when we discuss these things, this is a son of Kiamalesire, a peasant in my village, looking at the son of Sudhir Rajiv and thinking they are in the same position. The government of Uganda this year has a budget, if I am not mistaken, of about 52 trillion shillings.
70.
72, most of it is debt rollover, and which is not money coming to budget for government spend. The money available in the budget for government spend is around 50 billion.
Okay.
No, it's 52 billion.
27.
It is 20.
27.
No, the 27 is just the collection.
The collection.
No, that's what is available
To spend. Okay. So essentially, you are going to... So let me say, assume you are going to spend... one second,
I'm going
guys.
to ask now Dr.
You are going to
Mumuza.
spend $10 billion. Let me assume it's 37 billion. That's $100 per person in Uganda.
Thank you, Andrew.
How can Uganda government provide medicines for everybody across the whole country? I think that we demand from our government much more than it can ever deliver. Even if God came and presided over the money Uganda government has, we cannot do all the roads.
Thank you, Andrew.
It cannot do all the roads.
Fred
fill all the
Mumuza
hospitals.
on Mr. Kalimera. Go on.
I
actually
got worried that putting me after Andrew, I might speak at 6.
or not at all.
So I planned to say very little. One is to give assurance.
Yes, there are some unhappy people with you about because you have not supported refunds to depositors above 10 million.
And that's what I wanted to clear, that they will be paid, except that process takes longer. The depositors fund pays immediately, the 10 million and below, but the others, Bank of Uganda has got to go through the process of establishing the assets, the liabilities, recovering those monies. Whichever money comes out, priority will go to the depositors. Okay. So it's going to take some time. They will be paid.
But there will be nothing that comes out.
No, there will be something. Let's wait and see. Let's watch the space. Two,
and then, two, quickly.
Somebody has said to Andrew, the protests are not just in Kampala, they are all over. And other people have protested differently. So you can also let the agencies a few. People are angry with corruption, including the members of parliament themselves. The last one is going back, whether Karimera or not. Can you recover from an economy that is not doing well? Taxes are a function of how that economy is performing. So until we fix that, and it has to do with the policies, the laws, and institutions.
So
now Karimera is on the institutional level. If the policies and laws are crippling performance of the economy, it doesn't matter. I'll give a simple example.
If there's no milk, even if you add
it doesn't matter how you pull the teat of the cow, you won't get anything. We were looking at the numbers the other day. We are importing from Tanzania much more than we've been importing from India. Tanzania is now the same rank as imports from China. But remember, imports from Tanzania are tax exempt because of EAC. So whether it is Karimera Msinguzi, the law and the policies are saying, don't tax goods from Tanzania. And Ugandans have shifted factories down to Tanzania to come back and sell here. Those are policy issues. Those are legal issues. Karimera won't fix them at institutional level. So we have got to get back that foundation.
Okay. Abdul.
Talk to Umar. Talk to Umar.
Honorable Abdul Katuntu.
No, they are there. 15. Yeah. Talk to Umar.
Honorable Katuntu, on microphone. Our final one, as I say thank you to all the gangsters. Look at that tweet from a gentleman. This is the first time I've got one like this one.
Oh, Mike?
Michael Chakulaga.
Chakulaga. Say hi to me, Chakulaga. Mike, listening from Kayunga Ugerede. Thanks for the program, Mr. Katun.
Tukutumide. Michael Chakulaga. You don't know this when you say Ntumira. He's the one who has requested for himself. So thank you so much for listening to the Capital Gang. Thank you, gangsters of the day. Honorable Ibra Semuju, Honorable Abdul Katuntu, Arthur Atohaire, Andrew Mwenda, Dr. Fred Mumuza. Thank you very much for contribution on the day. Cheptegei, we did talk about him a little bit. And
there is a point where we all united.
Yes, last night.
Really, we should have given him 10 minutes. Anyway.
Star Cafe, thank you very much for your powering of the gang. I am Oscar Semwe Amsoke, and I shall see you next week.